So thank you for the other participants so far. And it was very interesting to actually hear all these practical examples, the good things that are going on in Denmark, and also regarding the funding sources from Poland, from Anna. But now we are actually taking a step a little bit back, and we will I will talk about more the theoretical aspect and perhaps why such energy efficiency improvements are actually needed. And so my name is Kerli, and I'm working for Stockholm Environment Institute Tallinn Center. And I will give a presentation regarding a research that was carried out under the CAMS project back in spring 2019. And together with me, I also had my colleagues Madis Org and Piret Kuldna, who helped me to carry out this particular research. So what was the goal of this research? So basically what we did, we evaluated different energy efficiency projects to see to what extent they have implemented climate adaptation and mitigation measures. And also we looked at different synergies between these measures. What was the methodology was that we developed quite an extensive questionnaire that was distributed among the different developers and project leaders of these energy efficiency projects. And we also carried out an extensive desk research. But it needs to be explained what do we actually mean by synergies. So the synergies of climate change mitigation and adaptation measures are basically the type of climate measures that help to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, while at the same time helping to adapt also with the already changing climate conditions. So we already know that climate is changing, and the most important aspects of these are the heat waves that we are experiencing already in the summers that are increasing, also more extreme weather events such as heavy rainfall, rainstorm, fog, heavy snow, also increasing storm and wind that we can already see today, and obviously rising sea level. So these are some of the main aspects regarding the things what we need to take into account while adapting to the changing climate. However, the synergies can also be negative. So the implications between adaptation and mitigation are not always positive. But just to understand better what do we mean by synergies, here is an example of a positive synergy in Italy. So this is a residential building from Torino. You can see that here a living forest has been integrated into the building's outer shell. So this can help to cool down the building during hot summer months, but at the same time, there is a positive impact also on mitigation, because it can also help to improve the thermal insulation and reduce the energy consumption of the building as such. Another positive example of synergies is green roofs, because while knowing that in the future we're going to have more heavier rainfalls, the green roofs can help us to manage the water management a little bit more better, because it can absorb the rainfall and as such restore the natural water cycle. Also, it can reduce the effects of severe storms, because the green roofs can act as protection for hail or as sponge absorbers. But there's also positive effects for mitigation, because green roofs can also help to increase the energy efficiency through increased cooling systems. Also, there's a positive effect for urban heat island effects and biodiversity, and also increased energy output of photovoltaic solar panels. So here is an example of perhaps most commonly known negative aspect of synergies between climate adaptation mitigation measures. So here you can see an example of a residential building from China. As we know, there is a growing need for cooling in the future due to the increasing heat waves in the summer. But this also means that there's a negative impact on mitigation, because more energy is consumed, and as such, there will be more greenhouse gases. So this is not only going on in China, but also elsewhere in the world, also closer to us. What do we actually mean, going back now to our particular research, what do we actually mean by the energy efficiency projects that we evaluated? So basically we selected 17 different building projects among our project partner countries. So from Sweden, Estonia, Russia, Latvia, Poland, and Germany. And the aim was to select at least one renovated building project and at least one newly built building project from these countries that have applied energy efficiency measures. So a little bit more about the background of and the methodology of this research. Before going to do expert interviews or to question the project leaders of these projects, our project team here in SCI Tallinn mapped down 50 climate adaptation and mitigation measures in total. And these measures we divided into two main groups related to various aspects of the buildings. So in the first group of these measures, we mapped down climate adaptation mitigation measures that were linked to energy and building envelope. In this group, we had 24 climate adaptation and mitigation measures. And then we mapped down what are the aspects of synergies between these measures. So you could have adaptation measures that have certain implications on mitigation and vice versa. So mitigation measures that have certain implications on adaptation. And then there's a certain group of adaptation and mitigation measures left that don't have any aspects that link with each other. And in this first group of measures, we had 13 of those measures that actually have certain synergies between each other. The second group of measures were linked to the other aspects of buildings, such as location picking, surrounding landscape, general project management and supervision, also ventilation, air conditioning, cooling, water and water supply, electrical equipment and lighting. In this group of measures, we mapped 26 different climate adaptation mitigation measures. And out of these, only 9 had actually something to do with linking aspects between each other, so the so-called synergical measures. So going into the results of this research, on this slide we can see the results from the first group of the measures, so the measures that are energy and building envelope related. On this slide you can see 2 different graphs. So one is representing the results from newly built buildings, and the second one is representing the results from the retrofit projects. So in the middle of those 2 graphs, then you can see the type of adaptation and mitigation measures that actually have certain synergies between each other. And then, as I explained previously, there are adaptation measures that didn't have any implications on mitigation, or mitigation measures that didn't have any impacts on adaptation. So basically, what we can see from this slide as an outcome is that we can clearly see that, and the green color actually represents the number of building projects that applied certain measures above the minimum standards. And the light green represents the number of building projects that applied certain measures to the only asked or the minimum standards. And then the overall length of these columns shows the actual or the total number of all the building projects that applied certain measures. And what we can see is that in the new buildings, the adaptation has been taken more seriously compared to the renovated buildings. We can also see that a number of measures were applied more above the minimum standard compared to the retrofit projects. Now, regarding the synergies, then we can see that in retrofit projects, there was more mitigation measures that have impacts on adaptation, while and these were actually measures that were related to energy efficiency improvements, such as better air tightness, energy efficient heating systems, and automated interclimate. While for newly built projects, we can also see more adaptation measures that also had impacts on mitigation, and more measures that were innovative, such as green roofs, passive solar heating, shading, certain things that were not so popular on retrofitted building projects to apply. Now moving on to the next category of measures, which was then measures that were linked to certain other aspects of buildings, such as landscaping, location picking, water supply, general project management, and so on. And here actually the picture is quite similar to the previous slides, because we can also see that a lot more measures under the new buildings were implemented above the minimum standards. And we can also see that, again, adaptation has been taken more seriously, even though it's not that adaptation is entirely left out from retrofit projects. And regarding the impacts for different synergies between these climate adaptation mitigation measures, then there was more mitigation measures that have impacts on adaptation than vice versa. And the most popular measures in this category in both renovated and new buildings were measures such as heat recovery, ventilation, and smart meters. And in the case of new buildings, again, there was other more innovative things that were considered as well, such as special courses for builders or the people that maintain the building. Also, bicycle parking lots were built more often. Stormwater systems were more innovative, and so on. So just quickly jumping also to some of the main conclusions, while questioning all the project leaders and the developers, we could see that the mitigation adaptation are rather delivered quite separately and not in synergy. It also was that adaptation, if implemented, is rather more in an ad hoc manner, because it's more like a decision of the developer, and it depends on their willingness and knowledge. For instance, when I remember when I conducted an expert interview with one of the developers of a newly built building project here in Estonia, then it was actually intentional already for them from the beginning of the project to implement certain more innovative actions or measures. However, as I said before, it's not that the adaptation is entirely forgotten, also in retrofit projects. And some of the most popular adaptation measures that we saw were the maintenance of plant cover and removal of dangerous trees near the buildings, which is very helpful in terms of the future extreme weather events and increasing storms. Also, permeable roads and car parks that help to reduce the water issues and the flooding issues. And also the stronger attachment of elements fastened to buildings that can also cope with increasing storms. But it could also be that these measures are more like implemented more in a business as usual manner and not really intentionally taken as adaptation measures per se. So just a few recommendations that we made as well. I think it's very important that in the planning of the measures, first of all, the negative impacts between certain things to be applied needs to be taken into account, and if possible, then to be compensated by a combination of measures. An example of this, again, going back to this air conditioning that requires more energy in the future, would be then to use energy efficient cooling systems. I have also seen some more innovative recommendations, like I've seen cooling systems that can collect CO2, for instance, that could be further used. So, these are some of the main things that could be done, while knowing that one thing can lead to actually a negative impact. Also, very important would be to update existing norms for buildings, and if possible, integrate more with climate adaptation aspects. And handbooks and guidelines obviously are also very useful, especially for engineers and architects to have more technical requirements in the future. and also for buildings that need renovation. And I already know some very good examples of very good, strong handbooks from Sweden and England, for instance, available. And also very important recommendation is that the programming EU climate policy should challenge more specialized approach, attempting to integrate the mitigation and adaptation policies more in horizontal value merit. And as Valdur started this meeting today, this is already something that is going to be improved in the near future. But that's it from my side. Thank you.